What is up, Dynasty Leaguers? Welcome back into another one of my 2021 first round 1QB rookie profile series. This video is going to be on my 110 in one quarterback leagues. If you missed any of the previous 9, 101 through the 109, I invite you guys to go back and check those out because today's video is going to be returning to the running back position as my RB4. My top 3 running backs were actually my 101, my 102, and the 1.03. We had a huge run of wide receivers and a tight end in there. And now we're back at the running back position with Memphis running back Kenneth Gainwell. So let's get into it. So Gainwell's ADP is currently the 112 in one quarterback March ADP, taken anywhere from the 110 all the way down to the 2.08. He's being taken a lot on this first round fringe. You know, some of the picks are late first round, 111, 112. Some of them are early second round at the 201, 2 or 3. But he can be found a little bit later in some of these mock drafts. So he has a pretty wide range, at least in terms of how people are currently valuing him. And I think that is pretty fair given that the fact that he is a Memphis running back. We've had Memphis running backs come out of college in the past few years and not really do much in the NFL. They're explosive. They have awesome collegiate stats, but they don't really translate all that well. The most recent actually being Antonio Gibson, and possibly the best Memphis running back we've seen in the past decade or so. But then there's also the fact that this is not really a strong running back class, and in comparison, it is a very strong wide receiver class. So a lot of these wide receivers are being bumped up ahead of a bunch of these running backs that are not Najee Harris and Travis Etienne and Javonte Williams. And so these other guys, Kenny Gainwell and Jamar Jefferson and Michael Carter, you know, a bunch of those guys are being kind of left in the dust in this mid-second or early second, all the way down into the third rounds. That could present a pretty solid value, but I actually have Gainwell as my 110. So when you look at his stats collegiately, freshman season wasn't actually a whole lot going on. 4 attempts, 91 yards, 1 touchdown, added an additional 6 receptions and 52 receiving yards through the air. But he was playing behind Darrell Henderson at the time, Tony Pollard, Patrick Taylor, who was an undrafted free agent last year signing with the Green Bay Packers. And so there was already a lot of players and a lot of competition at the running back spot for a freshman Gainwell to come in and not really have all that much of an opportunity, very similar to what we saw with Najee Harris at Alabama. And then it wasn't until his sophomore season, 2019, 231 attempts, 1,459 yards, and 13 rushing touchdowns, while also adding 51 receptions, 610 yards, and 3 touchdowns through the air. The receiving game is absolutely phenomenal. Very much what you want to see out of your running backs. And at this year, 2019, there was no Darrell Henderson. There was no Tony Pollard. Patrick Taylor actually got injured. He was initially the de facto starter, but he got injured, and so Gainwell had to take over. And he actually even relegated Antonio Gibson to the bench and being more of a backup. Gibson only had 33 rush attempts. You might have heard that stat a lot last year with Gibson's analysis, but it was all Kenny Gainwell in 2019, even ahead of what we now know to be a pretty fantastic NFL running back, Antonio Gibson. And so last year, junior year 2020, he did opt out due to COVID-19, like a lot of these players that we have seen, specifically these higher and more talented end players. Gainwell was just like them in that mix, opted out due to COVID-19. And to be honest, Memphis actually kind of struggled. They played 11 games. Their leading rusher only had 530 yards, and that wasn't really a strong suit for Memphis after losing 2 of their primary ball carriers in Darrell Henderson and then Kenny Gainwell and Patrick Taylor as well. Like I said, going on in last year's class to be an undrafted free agent. So it didn't really have a lot of people. It was a whole running back by committee, which I think really shows just how much Gainwell was able to separate, at least from the remainder of his team, in his sophomore season. So when we're talking about analytics for the running back position, I've mentioned this before in my previous videos with Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, and Javonte Williams, that I have a pretty set group of markers, there's 8 markers that I really like to look for analytically for running backs that come into the NFL. If you hit on all 8 of those 8 markers, it's a pretty select group, pretty fantastic group to be a part of, including guys like Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon, Ezekiel Elliott, D'Angelo Williams, Todd Gurley, Marshawn Lynch. The list goes on. And even being part of the 7 out of 8 group is still very select. Guys like Saquon Barkley, Reggie Bush, Cam Akers, Nick Chubb, Dalvin Cook, Maurice Jones-Drew, Christian McCaffrey. Like, this is a pretty solid marker and analytics lens that you can view these running backs in coming out of college. So I showcase the markers with, like I said, Harris, Etienne, and Javonte Williams, and we'll be doing the same here with Kenny Gainwell. So Gainwell comes in currently hitting on 3 out of 8 possible markers. The ones that he does hit on are best reception season. I'm looking for over 25. He hit that with 51, doubled it in his sophomore 2019 season. I'm looking for a best yards from scrimmage in your freshman or sophomore year to be over 1,000. He doubled that. He had 2,069, one of the most productive early producers in this class, actually, with 2,069 total yards in 2019. Then I'm also looking for over 6 total career yards per carry in college, and he's hitting that at 6.6. So those are the 3 ones that he currently hits on as of right now. What does he currently miss on? Well, that would actually be weight and BMI. I'm looking for 200 plus weight, and he currently is sitting at 195. Sports Reference has him at 191. I've seen other sites down in the 180s. It's kind of a wider range of Gainwell's weight right now, so I'm really interested to see what he comes in at during his pro day. Like Travis Etienne bulked up 10 pounds from his reported 205 to being a 215 in his combine. Can Kenneth Gainwell come in and bulk up and hit over that 200? I would really like to see that. And then finally, the BMI he also misses on. I'm looking for a 29.75, basically a 30 or higher. He's currently sitting at a 27 with his reported 5'11", 195 body frame. And to be honest, I don't even think he's going to hit that unless he truly, really insanely bulks up, because at his reported 5'11" height, he would need to weigh at least 215 pounds to be able to hit on that 30 BMI. And so I'm just going to mark that as a complete miss for Gainwell, but that's not the end of the world. Christian McCaffrey is a 7 out of 8 player, did not hit on BMI, and he is absolutely fantastic. So there are cases where BMI is not the end all be all for these running backs. There are 3 additional markers that I'm looking for that we currently don't have. The first being a 40-yard dash. I'm just looking for a sub 4.6, which Gainwell should hit pretty easily. Speed score, I'm looking for a plus 100 speed score, which is basically just an adjustment for their size and their speed to be able to get a solid measurement and compare all of these running backs equally in terms of their height, weight, BMI, and speed. And so a plus 100 speed score for Gainwell at his reported 195 weight, even 200 would be a sub 4.45. I don't know if that's the range that we're going to see Gainwell run in. I've seen a lot of people predicting him as a more of a 4.5 runner, but a 4.45 would definitely be very much what you want to see out of Gainwell, especially at his given weight. And so if he does exceed a 4.45 and has a plus 100 speed score, he would hit on that as well, bringing him up to a total of 5 out of 8 markers. And then finally, the last marker that we don't have right now is draft capital. I'm looking for first or second round draft capital to hit on that marker. And I'm really hoping that Gainwell comes out with second round draft capital, although I'm not entirely sure if he is going to be a second round guy, because I do think that, like fantasy football and draft analysis believe, the NFL could believe that there is a wide gap in these running backs, specifically after the top 3, leading Gainwell to be more of a third round running back. So if he does end up being a late day 2 pick, he won't hit on that marker, but that still brings him up to being a solid 5 or potentially 6 out of 8 marker kind of running back, which is very solid for where he is in his tier. He's not a top tier or an elite prospect in this class. That's not what we're expecting out of him, but it makes him a very solid contributor to the depth of this class and a potential late first or early second round player for you in your rookie drafts. So I did a little bit more research and I dug into the prospect profiles of former Memphis running backs. And so I dove in, this is basically since 2005. these are all the running backs that came out of Memphis since then. You can see D'Angelo Williams and Antonio Gibson are ahead of that pack. You have Darrell Henderson with the Rams, Tony Pollard with the Cowboys, and then Gainwell and then Patrick Taylor just last year. And you can kind of see how they stack up with their markers. D'Angelo Williams is a full 8 out of 8 marker kind of guy. Antonio Gibson is sitting there at 5. Pollard and Henderson both sitting there at 4. And then we have Gainwell and all of his markers that I just ran down. So it is very possible that Gainwell ends up comping very closely to kind of a mix of Antonio Gibson and Darrell Henderson, right? He is a bit of a smaller back. He's not as big as Antonio Gibson, not as small as Darrell Henderson. He did have the college production, much more than both of those players. I assume that his draft capital would probably be in that late second, early third round, very similar to what we saw with both Gibson and Darrell Henderson. And he is a 21-year-old running back, which makes it a very solid investment, at least initially, for him to have more time to develop in the NFL and then eventually still hit while he's on his rookie contract. What I'm really, really curious on is that speed score, like I mentioned, because Antonio Gibson is a freak athlete. 4.39 40-yard dash at his 220 weight is absolutely insane. But Darrell Henderson at around 200 pounds did run a 4.49, which is about, like I said, where we see Gainwell actually potentially ending up. So that's kind of where I see Gainwell being a mix of a Gibson and a Darrell Henderson. Gibson was very much a value last year, although he did get propped up into that late first round after the NFL draft, being a third round draft capital kind of player to the Washington football team, a team that definitely needed some running back assistance. So that can at least showcase where Kenneth Gainwell stands in comparison to his other previous Memphis running backs. So finally, we can get into landing spots for Gainwell, specific team landing spots where he can come in and immediately succeed, or at least have some sort of a path to succeed if he does end up being, a third round pick. Not necessarily really what we want to see, but a third round pick to a very good landing spot will definitely prop up his rookie draft ADP, like we saw with Antonio Gibson, like we saw with Keyshawn Vaughn last year. That's definitely well within the range of possibilities for Gainwell to justify a late first round pick in one quarterback drafts, or potentially even superflex drafts. So I picked out 3 landing spots here. I mentioned 1 or 2 of these in previous videos as well, but the first one is the Arizona Cardinals. They have the 17th pick in the second round at 49th overall, and then also the 15th pick in the third round at 80th overall. So both of those are very much in the possibility and the range for Kenny Gainwell. Probably more so that third round pick than the higher mid second round pick. But Gainwell to the Cardinals could be a very solid landing spot. I don't expect Kenyon Drake, who is a free agent and possibly signs elsewhere by the time that this video drops, to be an Arizona Cardinal in 2021 and beyond. They've talked a lot about, and Cliff Kingsbury's talked about, Chase Edmonds being that kind of a 3-down back and has that opportunity. But I think that they're going to need to bring someone else in, and Gainwell can absolutely do that. He can be a pass catching weapon for Kyler Murray out of the backfield. He can be a 3-down running back. He could be, if Chase Edmonds is a 1B, he can be the 1A to Chase Edmonds and play in a high up-tempo offense with the Arizona Cardinals. And I think that would be really good for fantasy football, especially if he's receiving that receiving volume and the receptions for a floor and a ceiling to be a solid mid RB2, like a Kareem Hunt kind of a player for the Arizona Cardinals. So that's why I really like his possibility and his prospects with the Arizona Cardinals in that mid-second or mid-third range. The second team is the New York Jets. They have a multitude of picks in the first 3 rounds, and they have 2 first-round picks. They got a second-round pick and 2 third-round picks. So they have the 202, 34th overall. They have the 302, 66 overall, and 322 at 87th overall. I think if he goes at any of those picks, probably not the second round, but this third-round picks in general, if he goes to the New York Jets, and that is the only running back that they really bring in, not really talking about other free agents coming and signing with the New York Jets, and Gainwell is basically coming in as the only guy, that could very much be like what we saw with Antonio Gibson last year, where he's a running back that comes in on the third round draft capital to a team that very much and very desperately needs running back assistance. Even though it isn't a good team, he can still be a very solid producer, being the 3-down running back and the surefire RB1 for that team. And I think that would be really good for fantasy football because it could be that workhorse on a bad team, but he gets some receptions, and so it makes it out to be a solid RB2 for fantasy football. In year one would be a very, very good showing for Gainwell to the New York Jets in that second or third round. Then finally, we have the Houston Texans. Their first pick is the 3rd overall pick in the 3rd round, 67th overall. That is their first pick of the 2021 NFL draft, barring any other trades. But that's at least what they have right now. And I think that it would be a very solid landing spot for Gainwell, even though they already have David Johnson, who just re-signed a 1-year deal for 2021. They just signed Mark Ingram, a 1-year deal for 2021. But Gainwell could be their future, a young injection at running back, because their average running back age right now is like 30 between David Johnson and Mark Ingram. They inject some youth, they get some speed, some talent, some of the more dynamicism and explosiveness that they don't have with David Johnson and Mark Ingram. And I would not be surprised if this actually happens, if Gainwell ends up being the lead running back for the Houston Texans by the end of the year. Specifically, if Deshaun Watson is still a Texan too. I could very much see Watson kind of pushing for Gainwell to be the starter sooner rather than later, much like we saw with Aaron Jones in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. Just kind of that connection is there. I definitely think that could be a very solid landing spot for Gainwell in both 2021 and for the remainder of his rookie contract to get a very nice and very easy transition into the NFL. Doesn't have to come in and be an immediate starter, like a James Robinson or a Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He can transition easily like J.K. Dobbins or Jonathan Taylor behind 1 or 2 established veterans in the NFL already, learn from them, transition easily, and then end up being the guy by the end of the year. So I really, really like the Houston Texans as a landing spot for Gainwell as well. So that is going to do it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please, if you aren't already, subscribe to the DLF YouTube channel. We are trying to drop content, if not 5 days a week, every single day throughout the remainder of the spring into the summer. Like this video, ring that notifications bell to be notified every single time that we drop a new YouTube video, be it more of these prospect videos, mock drafts, Mannequin Show, Commissioner Chronicles, more stuff coming your way. And that is all through the DLF YouTube channel. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will catch you guys next time.